Amiao David is with me in studio as we take a look at how we can strengthen Africa's development agenda. And I mean, what then we have set on the way for us to ensure that we achieve this. Doc, there's a growing concern that many development policies that is in the global south aren't based on rigorous evidence. And we are here talking about research and evidence-based, for that matter, evidence-based development. Do you agree that this is a significant challenge, number one? And if so, then how can we get to address the same? Or perhaps how can governments then come in to ensure that development actors can proceed to better integrate data as well as research into policy making, and especially at this point where we are talking about Africa, and that Africans themselves are not right at the heart of these research processes?
Yes, it's a big issue. We call it flipping the tradition. And what is the tradition? The tradition is that researchers in Africa, Kenya here, are conceptualized, designed, written by Global North.
Right.
And they send it to their government, USAID, DFID, and other foreign agency for funding. They do the negotiation. The agreement is written with them. And then they come to Africa and take our researchers as data collectors. When they finish collecting the data, the analysis of the data, the synthesis of the data, the publication of the data are all done in Global North. And at times the presentation are done in Global North. What some of us have been doing since 2020 was how do we flip the tradition? How do we get African researchers to conceptualize, develop their research agenda, to design it themselves, to implement it themselves, publish the funding themselves? We don't have any problem if we can use a Global North scholar to support you. Right. And then after it has been published, do the dissemination here with our citizens.
Right.
We are talking about bottom up. You go to Western Kenya, you sit down with a household for 3 hours, 10 hours, you collect data, and they don't even hear from you. So how do we get it so that the research funding can be presented in Kakamega, in Busia, in Kisumu, in all those places, so that the citizens themselves will know what is working and what is not working.
Right.
This is what we are promoting. The challenge is that our African government are not producing the funds to do this research. Most of our researchers are not getting any funding from government allocation. USAID was promoting localization. And Linda, do you know that their target was that by 2025, 30% of their program will be led by local partners.
Okay.
As of 2024, only 9%
has been.
You know, the goal was 30%.
Right.
Only 9%, because we don't have people who can sit down, conceptualize the idea, design the idea, write the idea, defend the idea, negotiate the idea, mobilize their team to implement it.
Right.
That is the challenge.
That is the biggest challenge. And I'm glad that you mentioned this, and it takes me back to what you had earlier mentioned, the Africa Agenda 2063. They say it is relatively under-communicated to the public as it stands right now. It's still, say a pipe dream, I would want to argue. What do you suppose needs to be done to ensure that this particular one, because then we already have a document that looks beautiful to address the concerns, the local concerns of Africa. How do we then get to have this blueprint, gain traction across the continent, across the globe, but of importance, have it implemented?
My organization is doing something called inclusive participatory governance to promote sustainable development, especially the Agenda 2063.
Right.
How do we take such a nice document and develop what we call evidence products? What are evidence products? Politicians need policy brief. One pager. Can you summarize Agenda 2023 into a one pager so that a senator or a parliamentarian can just read and understand? Can you do a poster? When you look at the global development goals, they have done it on a poster. On my webpage, you have it, all the 17 goals.
Yes.
Do you develop a poster so that in community centers, in places, even in your studio, as a background of a poster with cartoons or something on Agenda 2063? Can we develop maybe a workbook so that children in high school can even color?
Right.
These are what we call evidence products.
Right.
Can you do a storybook about on Agenda 2063? Can the media, can the media translate Agenda 2063 into a banner that they can talk about it, so that every citizen can have it on their fingertips? Everybody can have it, can be able to explain it. If you bring a journalist here and you said, explain Agenda 2063 in your local language,
right,
to your people for them to understand, how many of them can do it?
Unfortunately, they probably don't even know of the existence of the document.
So these are some of the things that we need. If we want inclusive participatory governance,
right,
then documents should be translated to the level of the people,
right,
into the local language, the vernacular, so that people can really have ownership of it.
Beautiful.
And then when people get ownership of it, then it becomes a reality.
All right. As we sum it up, this shocker from the traditional donors, first of all, to redirect funds or redirect aid to cut off funds from Africa, this has raised concerns across. And, Africans, Kenya, for instance, we are just struggling to figure out how we get to survive until we get to achieve the sustainable, development agendas that we have, like the 2063 agenda. What then do we do to stay afloat as we close?
It's a big challenge. My organization, we lost about 60%. We were funding about 21 research programs in 8 countries, right, with about 40 research institutions. Those programs have been closed, but we haven't given up.
Right.
There are other opportunities. How do we bring people together? How do we mobilize local resources? How do we work with other donors who are interested? And, I was telling my team, right, the other day that crossing of these things by DFID, by USAID, is a blessing in disguise.
Okay.
Because now people have to sit down. I always tell my team that comfort is an enemy to success.
Right.
And I think our researchers and our development people have been so comfortable with donor money that our creativity and innovation is being killed.
Okay.
But when we are in difficult situation, that is where innovative, creative, inspiring ideas can come for us to take ownership of our own development agenda on the continent.
Thank you so much, Dr. David Ameyu. I'm looking forward to host you some more so that we also get to understand some more on what it will take for us to sweep our leadership to this side of understanding it. Because then, as many have argued, they've been puppets of the West for quite some time. Perhaps that's where Africa is where it is today.
Linda, I'm inviting you to our Evidence to Action conference in Ghana on July 14th to 18th, where we are doing participatory governance to shape sustainable development. Right. And I would like to
20th to 18th of what?
Of July.
Of July.
Yes.
All right. We were looking forward and following up. And now the world is a global space. I mean, it's a small space. At least we'll be on the online space to understand some more for those of us who are not able to get there. But we're looking forward to change some more as to development in Africa. Thank you so much once again.